Guys, what if I told you everything you thought you knew about your mind was a lie? What if the things you see, the things you feel, the things you think are real, aren't? That's what we're diving into today. 21 psychological facts that are so creepy, so unsettling, they might just make you question your sanity. And to make things even more interesting, we're not just going to list these facts. Oh, no. We're going to weave them into a story. A dark, twisted story about a guy named, well, you'll meet him soon enough. His name was Arthur, and he hadn't left his apartment well, he couldn't remember. The city outside was a cacophony of noise and light, but inside his apartment, it was always quiet, always dark. Arthur spent most of his days staring at the cracked screen of his laptop, the pale glow reflecting in his hollow eyes. He was a writer, or at least he used to be. Now the words wouldn't come, only the nightmares. See, Arthur was convinced something was wrong with him. He'd read an article online, 21 psychological symptoms you should never ignore, and suddenly every point on that list resonated with him. He felt anxious, paranoid, like something was always watching him. But was it all in his head? Was he simply manifesting these symptoms because he'd read about them? Psychological fact number 1, the placebo effect. Our minds are powerful things. Sometimes just believing something is real can be enough to make it feel real. One day, Arthur finally worked up the courage to leave his apartment. He told himself he needed groceries, but the truth was the 4 walls were closing in on him. He stepped out onto the bustling street, the noise and movement almost overwhelming after weeks of silence, and that's when he saw her, a woman, her face half hidden by a large hat, watching him from across the street. Chapter 4. The Baader-Meinhof Phenomenon. Arthur tried to shake off the feeling of being watched, but everywhere he went he kept seeing her, in the grocery store, on the subway, even in the reflection of his own window. Was she following him? Or was his mind playing tricks on him, latching onto this random woman because he was already so convinced someone was after him? Psychological fact number 2, the Baader-Meinhof Phenomenon. Ever notice how once you learn something new, you start seeing it everywhere? Chapter 5. The Bystander Effect. One night, Arthur was walking home when he saw a group of teenagers harassing an elderly woman. He froze, his heart pounding in his chest. He wanted to help, but his feet felt rooted to the spot. He told himself someone else would intervene. Surely someone else would step in and do the right thing. But no one did. Psychological fact number 3, the bystander effect. The more people present in an emergency situation, the less likely any individual is to help. Chapter 6. The spotlight effect. Arthur couldn't shake the feeling of guilt. He'd stood there frozen while that poor woman was being harassed. He felt like everyone on the street was judging him, whispering about his cowardice. He didn't realize that most people were too caught up in their own lives to even notice him. Psychological fact number 4, the spotlight effect. We tend to overestimate how much other people notice our appearance or behavior. Chapter 7. The power of silence. Back in his apartment, the silence was deafening. Arthur couldn't escape the image of the woman's terrified face. He knew he should have done something, said something, anything, but he hadn't. And now, the silence was eating him alive. Psychological fact number 5, the power of silence. Silence can be a powerful tool, both for good and for bad. Chapter 8. The man on the train. A few days later, Arthur decided to take a train ride. He needed to get out of the city to clear his head. He found himself sitting opposite a man with kind eyes and a gentle smile. For the first time in weeks, Arthur felt a flicker of hope. Maybe he could talk to this man, confide in him about the darkness that seemed to be consuming him. Psychological fact number 6, the mere exposure effect. We tend to develop a preference for things simply because we are familiar with them. Chapter 9. The illusion of control. Arthur opened his mouth to speak, but the words caught in his throat. He told himself he was being silly, that he was making a big deal out of nothing. He convinced himself that he was in control, that he could choose to be happy. But the truth was, the darkness had already taken root. Psychological fact number 7, the illusion of control. We often overestimate our ability to control events, even when those events are clearly beyond our control. Chapter 10, the power of music. Arthur got off the train at a random stop. He wandered aimlessly, the sound of his own thoughts deafening. Then he heard music. It was coming from a small bar across the street. He hesitated for a moment, then stepped inside. Psychological fact number 8, the Mozart effect. Listening to music can actually improve your cognitive abilities, including your memory and focus. Chapter 11, the Cheerleader Effect. The bar was dimly lit and surprisingly crowded. Arthur found himself drawn to a group of people laughing and talking in the corner. They seemed so carefree, so happy. He wondered if maybe, just maybe, he could be like them again. Psychological fact number 9, the Cheerleader Effect. People tend to appear more attractive when they are in a group. Chapter 12, the Ben Franklin Effect. Arthur worked up the courage to approach the group. He offered to buy them a round of drinks, hoping to make a good impression. To his surprise, they welcomed him into their circle. For the first time in a long time, Arthur felt a genuine smile spread across his face. Chapter 13, the illusion of transparency. As the night went on, Arthur found himself opening up to his new companions. He told them about his anxieties, his fears, the darkness that seemed to follow him everywhere. He was sure they could see right through him, that they could see how broken he truly was. We tend to overestimate how much our internal emotions are visible to others. Chapter 14, the power of touch. One of the women in the group, a kind-hearted soul named Sarah, placed her hand over Arthur's. Her touch was warm and reassuring. In that moment, Arthur felt a wave of calm wash over him. He hadn't realized how much he'd needed that simple gesture of human connection. Chapter 15, the Halo Effect. Arthur found himself drawn to Sarah. She was beautiful, yes, but it was more than that. Her kindness, her compassion, it radiated from her like a warm light. He started to see her as a symbol of hope, a beacon of light in the darkness that had enveloped him. Arthur started spending more and more time with Sarah. He offered to walk her home, to carry her groceries, to do anything just to be in her presence. He didn't realize it, but he was slowly chipping away at the wall she had built around her heart. One day, as Arthur was leaving Sarah's apartment, he paused in the doorway. He wanted to say something, to tell her how he felt, but the words wouldn't come. He took a deep breath and stepped back inside. "Sarah," Arthur began, his voice trembling slightly, "I need to tell you something." And then he poured his heart out to her. He told her about his nightmares, his anxieties, his fear of the darkness. To Arthur's surprise, Sarah didn't recoil from his confession. Instead, she listened with a look of compassion and understanding. She told him that she believed in him, that she saw the good in him, that she knew he could overcome the darkness. With Sarah's love and support, Arthur started to heal. He began to see the world in a new light, a light filled with hope and possibility. He realized that the darkness hadn't truly gone away, but it no longer controlled him. Arthur learned that the human mind is a complex and often contradictory thing. It can be our greatest ally or our worst enemy. But most importantly, he learned that we are not alone. We all have our demons, our fears, our darkness. But we also have the capacity for love, for compassion, for hope. So the next time you find yourself questioning your sanity, remember Arthur's story. Remember that you are not alone, that your mind is capable of incredible things, both good and bad. The key is to learn how to harness the power of your mind, to use it to create the life you want, the life you deserve. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more mind-blowing content, be sure to give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button and leave a comment down below telling me which psychological fact you found the most fascinating.